I am Gianluca Fiorelli and welcome back to the third session. Today we are going to have a guest I sincerely was trying to have here for many months now. Not because this person is, that kind of, sometimes you can have snob guest that you are trying to have and they always say, no, that's easy. But the case is that he is a really smart guy. He's a really nice guy, but he's also a very busy guy. So finally, the start have a coincidence and we could record this episode. And I'm sure you're going to have a lot of fun, a lot of interesting things to listen to. This person, okay, is the person who coined the term and also all the strategy and philosophy behind it of product-led SEO substantially. He's also wrote many years ago a book about it. I have it on, you can see it behind, maybe not, but it's on my shelves. And he is an international SEO at heart. He works a lot. In fact, we got to know each other because of international SEO. For many years now, he's a full-time strategic consultant. And I mean, one of his clients is Anthropic himself. And this is very cool because, having an AI company, not just AI search, AI company having an SEO, product-led SEO as a strategic consultant, it's really, really important for all of us. This person is Eli Schwartz. Hey, Eli, how are you doing?
After that intro, I feel like we're done.
I always try to pamper my guest. So,
It's great to be here. I'm glad we finally did this. My apologies for making it so difficult. So just to explain, I've been a full-time consultant for 7 years, more than 7 years. Yeah, 7.5 years. The reason I love consulting is because I don't work 8 hours a day. So for anybody that is thinking of becoming a full-time consultant, I work 16 hours a day if you actually if I were counting up actual things I do for work, but I don't sit in front of a computer for 8 hours a day. And I'm very strict with my time on how I end up on podcasts because that requires that I sit at a computer. Whereas if I'm doing some of my other work, on my phone, I'm sitting at the park with my kids. So I'm glad you kept pushing me to be here. This is really important. We found a time to have this discussion. We've had so many discussions, but I think this is our first recorded one. So glad to do it.
So, beside the news about your consulting with Anthropic, how SEO is treating you lately?
It's probably, I think I've been doing this 20 years. In my entire career, it's probably the most interesting time because we're in this moment where many people think that SEO doesn't matter. But at the same time, it does matter. And then there are many people that think it matters even more. So we have all these things happening at the same time. And I'd say one of the biggest signals for how valuable this space is are the companies that are raising money to say that the space is dead. So all these companies, these AEO visibility companies, they are basically making an SEO pitch, but an anti-SEO pitch. So there's money being thrown at them because they believe there's money to be spent. And we'll dive into it. But I think that most of the thinking is flawed around the way it's supposed to work. So we're in this moment where nothing is tied to reality. I'd say the closest thing to reality of how this space really is right now is to go to family members. And most of my family members don't use AI. My parents don't use AI. My siblings don't use AI. Many people I know don't really use AI to discover things intentionally. They'll get AI overviews. And that's the reality of where we are. It's not the reality that is discussed on social media. It's not the reality that is showing up in these venture pitches for the software. Yes, AI is creeping into search, but creeping. We aren't in this moment where suddenly AI is more important than traditional search. So traditional search, in my opinion, is as valuable or more valuable than it's ever been because the pie has shrunk. A lot of the spam has been pushed out. So there's less availability for companies to grab those traditional search results.
Yes, I agree. Not 100%. this is a conversation. Also because making the same example of a family, actually in my family, they use AI. And sometimes I have to even tell to my wife, "Hey, this is a network that don't always, if you are searching for something, don't just use AI because AI can troll you, telling you that something exists, but then you are going, for instance, flight tickets, and you are going actually to search to buy them, and there are no flight tickets for this precise destination from here in Valencia. My sons use them a lot, but more as a tool, not as a something that they use for search. They use other things for search sometimes. And maybe this is where actually SEO should start finally paying attention about search. But search is not just the search bar. The search bar is present in YouTube, it's present in so many surfaces that usually we are, as a consultant, we are offering as an option when should be part of the core. I just read this morning before starting your more, I think, one of your most recent LinkedIn posts, and it was you were saying, okay, so actually saying the same thing that you just told, and you were saying that AIO, answer engine optimization, is more like a superstructure, if I remember well, which is having SEO below it. I agree. Usually, I tend to think the other way around. I see SEO is more a framework and it has many specialization. And for instance, AIO, GEO, when we just talk about LLMs, and an LLMAO, if you want to be more generic, are just one of these vertical specialization of SEO. And somehow, like, we can call it as the last mile of SEO. So the
Yeah.
newest iteration of the overall integration of SEO. Don't you think, and this is going to be just the only question I ask you about the diatribe of the acronyms, don't you think that the success, the companies selling tools for AI, was that SEO always had such a bad name that it was easy to pick up rented from a quite obscure paper, the terminology GEO, for apparently presenting themselves as something totally different. When in reality, if you dig what they are proposing, nothing is really so different from what SEO has already evolved to now. And they always refer to something, a sort of SEO, which is the SEO we were doing 10 or 15 years ago, but not since, you know, rank training, not since birth, not since mom.
I think one of the reasons for the rise of a lot of these tools is they saw the old thing dying and disappearing and a new thing coming out. But there was no bridge, and none of them offer this bridge between the old and the new, except for the traditional tools. SEMrush and Ahrefs and Conductor offer that bridge. But these new tools aren't offering the bridge. So the requirement for the new tools is that Google disappears. And I don't think that was ever valid. So one parallel that you might think about is that a company, Tesla, reinvented the entire idea of making a car. So all the traditional American car companies are made, their cars are made in Detroit. There's a certain way they made cars. There's a certain way they sold cars. And Tesla changed that whole thing. They made the cars in California. They made the cars, they sold them in retail stores. They sold online. The prices were fixed. They used purely electricity. There wasn't even a charging network. Everything was totally new. But there was a bridge to the past because they use the same designers. They use some of the same plants. They actually, the plant that they used to make the Tesla in California was a Toyota plant. So maybe the VCs think this is like, oh, this is a total reinvention and it is a winner take all. Whoever can go and build this biggest company in this space will be successful, but they haven't built a bridge to the past and to the old way of doing SEO. Now, I think the old way of doing SEO, traditional SEO, still matters way more than AEO. I think I use AI tremendously for discovering things, but and we should dive into this, a lot of traditional search becomes more mid funnel. So if you use AI, let's say in your wife's example, and I'm planning a summer trip, I'm using a lot of AI to get ideas, but I'm then use those ideas to do traditional searches. So if I decide I want to go to a certain city, well, AI helps me find a certain city I want to fly to, then I Google it. Or if AI tells me about hotels, then I Google it. So I'm going to those hotel websites. It becomes more mid funnel. And that will likely always be the case. So again, I think the challenge is Google was required to die in order for this entire concept of AI and AEO being successful, and that will never be the case. And if you look at a lot of the tools and the messaging they have on their websites, they talk about, this is the biggest joke to me, they talk about perplexity. So I think that's a joke, right? Like if we're going to think about challenges to Google's dominance, it's really only ChatGPT and Claude. That's it. Yes, there are lots of other models. I would like Meta to be more successful. DeepSeek could be successful. Could be successful. There's, hybrid models, but it doesn't matter because we're talking about not the functionality of the tools. We're talking about market dominance and market share. The only ones that really matter in this case are ChatGPT and Claude. So anytime a website says, we'll help you discover your ranking on Perplexity, to me, that's like all those old SEO tools, which like you had to pay extra to find out how you're doing on Bing. And I don't know anybody that cared about how they were doing on Bing as much as Bing wanted to try. So I think that's the state we're in where there's this belief that SEO has changed, but I don't know that it really has that much.
Well, I agree. I agree in the sense that then we must not forget that Google is also Gemini, and Gemini worldwide is getting very close to ChatGPT. For instance, in Italy, it's already the most used AI model. And actually, is somehow funny if we try to look from the distance, but the real battle that we are seeing is between ChatGPT and Claude, Tropic, in somehow in order to see who is going to be the second, and especially who is going to be the dominant choice, the choice for business user. So we recently saw this declaration by OpenAI about that they want to substantially reinvent ChatGPT, somehow putting ChatGPT aside to transform it in a sort of cloud ecosystem. And yes, I agree with you with the fact that people can start for discovery using AI because it's easier with a conversational search to start asking it precisely what we want and then go on Google for a deeper middle of a funnel or even direct to transactional on Google or and this is maybe the relative success of big brands with a very strong app usage like Amazon, like Booking, directly searching. For instance, if there are some hotels suggested to me, maybe I can go directly to the TripAdvisor or Booking or Expedia application to see the price, to see the review, etc., etc., etc. Don't even pass from Google. But that it's clear. I mean, it's many studies are telling us that AI search is not subtractive but addictive. So it's not quitting market share, but expanding the market share of search. And then there is also this we can like or not like Google and how it works and how it it treats publisher and brands and so on. But we cannot deny that from the business side, they are smart. I mean, they are the Catholic Church of search. I mean, they are existing more than 20 years. And they are very smart. And now they are the ones that really are leading the so-called agentic search evolution with WebMCP, UCP, and so on and so on and so on. So we are going to have an agent-led SEO. Can you explain better this concept and how it relates or stems from the product-led SEO concept you created?
So I think that agents are very powerful in general. I don't know that we're going to get the full capability of agents unleashed anytime soon, but they will be very cool in general. But now let's talk specifically about search. So I had the opportunity to go to Google I/O. So I think you said you're releasing this in 4 weeks. So it'll have been 8 weeks before this is released. I went to Google I/O, and this is my second time going. I really enjoy going to Google I/O because I can directly talk to the product managers that are working on things. So whereas I know a lot of Googlers, I have many Googlers in my life that are friends and past colleagues, they're always guarded when I ask questions about search. But at Google I/O, the PMs come and they show up to answer questions. So I saw many of the features that Google demoed on the stage and everyone watched in the keynotes, but the real advantage of being at Google I/O is going into these private demos where one of them I waited in line for over an hour to be able to see the private demo, to be able to do the demo myself, and then to ask the PM questions. So one of the coolest things that Google is doing is something it's kind of related to agents, but it's like a souped up Google search alert. So you can build your own app essentially, and this app is an agent. So for example, what they demoed is, let's say I want to find out events happening near me. So I live in San Francisco. I'm curious about comedy events. I'm curious about farm days. I'm curious about hikes, like public hikes, and that are actually events. And I want to know the weather, and I want to pick which event to go to. So to do this in a normal way, to find out what I should do this weekend, I would have to do a search. What should I do this weekend? I open up a bunch of websites. I find ideas. I pin them, or I have to find a website that actually curates these things and I write them down. I save them in my Gmail, do something like that. But what you're doing in search with this new product, which again, if Google will eventually release, is I put in these parameters. And then again, you could do this in Gemini today. I put in the parameters, give me things to do this Sunday in San Francisco. I have a 4-year-old, I have an 8-year-old. I need it to be good weather. You can put all those things in, it'll give you an idea. But that's a one-time search. What this product is you create an app, which then essentially builds that website, which says every Saturday morning, every Sunday morning, I want to open up this app, and based on all the parameters, give me the top 3 things to do, and then map me there, show me the live traffic, give me the directions. And you can even tell me if I'm going to 3 different things, in what order should I go based on the hours that they're open, based on the predictability of the crowds, the traffic getting there. Like, that's a really cool app, but that's happening in search. So where that comes into agents is that is an agent. So instead of I'm doing one search, where should I go on Saturday? Where should I go on Sunday? You've asked an agent to go and deploy all these multiple searches to come back with an answer, and then Google builds that. So that's what agent-led search would really be, is that you now have something, but it could also be someone. Like in the past world, you might have had an EA. If you were CEO, your EA would go do these searches and then text you on Saturday morning and on Sunday morning and say, here's where you're going, and this is the time you're going to go, and this is your route. But now an AI agent does this for you. So when it comes to SEO, what this agent is doing is it's doing searches. So if I am a farmer's market, then I want to make sure I have a good website that the agent can go and explore, and I have all that information. Let's say I don't have the opening hours of my farmer's market. An agent won't know the opening hours of the farmer's market. Let's say I don't have the cost of entering the farmer's market. The agent won't know. So you want to do really good SEO, because the same way you did really good SEO for a human, let's say an executive assistant working with the CEO, you now want to do really good SEO because an agent is doing searches. So we will eventually be in a world where a lot of these searches, and I think travel is a great space that agent searches will happen, where you can say, go and find me places to go, pick my hotel, pick my flight, then pick my itinerary. Oh, Google does this. This is even crazier. I forget what they call this product, but if you're doing a
Was it
search,
Spark?
what? No,
Was it?
no.
No.
Spark is I wrote it in my newsletter. Everyone should read my newsletter.
Okay,
Probably
okay, okay.
Spark is more of it's an agent, but it's more related to Gemini. I think it's
Oh,
Gemini.
okay, okay, okay.
But this is something else. So what this will do is, this is another kind of search, not related to the app thing I just talked about. Again, I wrote out all 3 of these things in my newsletter. So this is a search where if I want to find out where I could get a haircut, so it gives me a bunch of possibilities of where I could get my haircut, but the information might not exist. So Google will call the barber shop and say, "Hi, I have a customer here that's interested in a haircut. What time are you open? How much does it cost? And can I make a reservation?" So the Google will do that for you. Like the actual search will do that. So that's also an agent. So again, like your phone number needs to be available. All your information needs to be available. If you would like the agent to consider your business, then you need a website. You need to have a phone number. You need to have an updated phone number. You need to have an address. So these are the things that, like, again, if we're thinking about how you do SEO, so today or yesterday, you did SEO for humans that are doing searches. In the future, you might do SEO for representations of humans, but they're still doing the exact same thing a human would do. Go and search, make a phone call, gather information.
Yes. This is kind of evolution I see myself. So we are going to create, needing to create the thing to optimization of the website, also technically, because sometimes the technical side of the future of SEO is somehow put, somehow hidden behind all the content stuff that is usually more popular to talk about. And yes, we need to optimize for both for the agent experience, which is essentially having a wonderful infrastructure and presentation of all the data. And this is structured data, the generic terms of structured data, not only of skill. And then obviously for humans, because I don't know if you agree with me, but I also see somehow a trend that, especially from the people who are rightly very enthusiastic of the evolution of the internet and of agentic search, that are substantially telling us that maybe the only user we are going to target are just agents, when I think it's not going to be so. I think there are so many other surfaces for discovering brands on the internet that will see humans be actually clicking on a link. Just think you were citing your newsletter. A newsletter is this kind of surfaces where you discover something, you click and visit with your eyes a website, but also branded searches and so on. So don't you think that sometimes there is such an enthusiasm for agentic search? I'm quite enthusiastic. A realistic enthusiasm, and which is going to forget the human experience.
I think that AI is going to be used for efficiency. I don't think that I'm competing with AI with my newsletter the same way I don't think movies are competing with AI. There's someone wants to read a book, they want to read a newsletter. I'm sure there's some people that, hopefully there are now, I have 15,000 subscribers. Hopefully somebody out there has an agent subscribed to my newsletter and it takes my 800 to 1500 words in each weekly newsletter and distills it down to like, here's three things you need to know. Good. I hope people are doing that. But for other people, they're reading it, they're skimming it, they're forwarding it, they're doing whatever it is. And I'm not competing with AI. Like if you want those three ideas, get the three ideas. If you want to read it, you read it. It's the same way. I'm sure you could watch a movie in 5 minutes. You can get the entire, like, the trailer, the clip of the movie, and then here's the ending. But that's not why we watch movies. Imagine you did that on a plane. You had a 15-hour flight and you watched like 60 movies with the 5-minute clips. No, you want to watch a 2.5 hour movie because it, like, uses up a bunch of time. You sit and read a book. Of course, you can get there was a I was actually moving. This is a good use of AI. I was moving and I had all these books I picked up from conferences that I never read. And I wanted to give them away because I thought about like the cost of moving each book. Like I'm gonna have a box of books I'm never gonna read. So what I did was I put all the books, I took the titles of all the books, I went into Gemini and I said, give me the full summary of each book. And then I had the summary of like 40 different books. And then I put that into Notebook LM and I said, now make me a podcast discussing each of the books so I can learn what was in the book. I've written a business book and middle of writing another business book. Most business books can totally be summarized in one Google. But I turned it into there. It's not a novel. Like you don't want to summarize a novel, but a business book you totally can summarize. And I think they're different experiences. I think that yes, they're the human experience. If you're writing a book that is needs to be read and learned, and so they're business books. Like one of my favorite books is Never Split the Difference. Could you learn all the ideas of negotiation from Never Split the Difference in a one-page doc? Of course, but I think it's a very enjoyable book. He's an FBI negotiator, and the stories help you actually learn the lessons. There's the human experience, and then there's the agent experience, and I think as SEOs, you need to be really focused on both. There are some people that are going to be humans visiting the website and searching the website, and there's some that are going to be agents, but you need to do both.
Yes, totally. And before we were saying, okay, people are using substantially AI for discovery or sometimes discovery, which can be even a very stupid question, but discover and so on. And then they move. Sometimes I see not a direct, but they move to search. Eventually, they return to AI for asking a specific question and then return to search, etc., etc., etc. And in your product-led SEO, you always said, okay, you should not, which is totally true. Uh, Actually, we can see that much of the evolution of quality, according to Google, is very tied to your concept. So you're saying a brand should not talk about the sex of the angels, so it should be tied what it is writing about what the brand is, what it offers, what are the characteristics, what are the topic also in terms of the information, what are the things they want to solve. And this is obviously, I tend to think at you, especially as a strategic consultant, especially in the SaaS world. But I think that this concept is practical and efficient for any kind of industry. So, on the other side, we know that if AI search is the first step where people discover things, we know that brands would be better that they are cited in the correct way on AI search. And sometimes popping up also for, let's say, generic topic search. So when you are talking with your clients, very generically, how you create a sort of good balance between, I know that you don't like informational content as such that much. I think this is what I understand from reading you, but how you can balance the necessity to be enough informational in order to appear in discovery phase and then doubling down with middle of a funnel content and eventually also bottom of.
So I convince brands when I talk to them, they're thinking about, they're obsessing, not even just thinking about informational content for SEO. I walk them through a buyer's journey and I walk them through a funnel of how users discover and then navigate their sites and then maybe make a purchase. And the important thing that I have them consider is what happens if they don't have that informational content. So let's say it's a SaaS brand, it's an analytics product, and they don't explain a glossary term. Like let's say they don't explain ROI. So if a user is navigating their site and they get to this page that, where they get to this term that says ROI and they're like, I don't know what ROI is. If they can click on the word ROI and it goes to informational page that says what ROI is, they stay on the website. Now, if they scroll their mouse over the word ROI and it doesn't click, and then they search on the top of the site, there's no word for ROI. So what do? They go back to Google. And if they Google the word ROI, and let's say this brand is Google Analytics, and Google Analytics did not define ROI, they go back to Google, and next thing they know, they find Adobe Analytics, and Adobe Analytics defines ROI for them, and this user decides to convert with Adobe. So informational content has an absolute purpose. You want informational content on your website. The problem is that many companies that I speak to, they want to have informational content for SEO, and then they want to have informational content for their website. So you end up having two pieces of informational content. What I want them to do is think of this entire buyer journey and say, should you have this piece of content? Yes, you need this piece of content. Is there a way to optimize it for SEO? Obviously, yes. Maybe improve the title tag, make sure that you cross link this page. That's probably about it. And then if you get search visitors, that's great. But the justification for the budget of this page is not because of SEO. So that's what I always have them think about. When it comes to SaaS, I don't even know that many SaaS tools should be spending as much on SEO as they do. And the reason why is because there's a finite amount of users that are ever going to come from search. So you need to model out how many of those users are going to come from search. How many pages could you potentially have that bring in search visitors? And once you've achieved some sort of percentage of that, you've got your 80% of SEO done, there's no reason to continue investing in SEO. But the reason people continue to invest in SEO is because it becomes its own silo, its own investment bucket that you just invest in SEO. So when I think of things holistically, so here's my 100% of acquisition, I'm going to get 60% of acquisition is going to come from brand marketing, 30% of acquisition is going to come from paid marketing, and 10% is going to come from SEO. When you think about it like that, then you can say 10% of my budget should go for SEO. When you don't do that breakdown, suddenly you say, okay, SEO costs me $10,000 a month. No matter what, I'm going to spend $10,000 a month. Paid marketing costs me $1 million a month. No matter what, I'm going to spend $1 million a month. And brand marketing costs me $10,000 a month. No matter what, I'm going to spend $10,000 a month. Now you see that the distribution is broken up based on the way I just divide this up. You should be spending the most money on brand marketing and the least money on SEO. So I walk them through the journey first so they can see this. And then we discuss SEO. And I don't even sell them. Obviously, I'd benefit personally if they want to hire me for SEO that they already wanted to spend. When I break it down, a lot of times the conclusion is, oh, I don't really need you. And I'm like, that's fine. I'd much prefer not having a client that is mad at me because we didn't achieve their expectations. I'd rather change their expectations to then decide if they need to do SEO.
I agree. I agree with you. I think that especially in the beginning of a SaaS life, branding is the most important because and eventually in that case is SEO can help branding, but very specifically with a very specific project for SEO for branding. Like, you should have this kind of organization schema. When you are doing branding, you should always be able to associate your name as a brand or your name of your branded product with these specific words, because maybe you have a product that the people must start associating your product with things they are searching. So this could be quite as almost a project kind of work, not even maintaining or growing. But then there is one aspect that maybe could be interesting with the obvious balancing in the budgeting of SEO as meant as online reputation management, as a companion of branding, especially now with LLMs that are so able to surface things that had been said and written, hey, 15 years ago. And people, because AI is pushing them out, things are new. So this is a good framing for SEO ongoing eventually, also for SaaS or brand in general. Not just for discovery, not just for generating traffic, not just for creating brand recognition thanks to specific type of work in semantics, entities, blah, 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 but also somehow as a sort of classic forensic SEO.
Yeah, I don't think enough people pay attention to brand. Again, mostly because they don't look at SEO holistically. They just think about how they want to operate in this channel. And I think when you look at SEO holistically, you can see where does SEO help brand, like you said? Where does brand help SEO? Where does SEO help paid marketing? All of this has to be paired together and work together and help each channel. And a brand is something I've been writing a lot about on my newsletter because I think that the primary thing that matters for AEO is brand. Because the way I think of AI and LLMs in search are an extension of that. So if you think about what is AI? AI is an imitation of human thinking. So it's as if you've asked like an expert human to do something for you. We've all done this with medical stuff. We always wished we had a doctor we could ask all our weird medical questions, and here AI just does that thinking for us. So the same happens with search. So whereas before it used to be able to optimize for search and rank on something you didn't deserve to rank on, with AI, it does more thinking. And what bubbles out of the thinking is brand. So the example I once gave a apparel startup is with traditional search, if you made a t-shirt, you could optimize for best t-shirt, even if you were not the best t-shirt. There were ways to do that. I had a friend who had a t-shirt company and he wanted to rank on AI for best t-shirt. So whereas in the past, you could do SEO to rank on best t-shirt without being the best t-shirt, you would optimize your title tag, you bought a bunch of links, you had your internal links, you did all the things you could do. When it comes to AI, it's hard as a startup to be the best t-shirt if you're not the best t-shirt. And the reason why is because AI, again, thinking like a human, is looking for those signals of what is the best t-shirt. It's looking at reviews, but most of all, it's looking for brand. It is able to extract who are the best apparel makers, what's the highest quality, what are the signals. So when it comes to AEO, I think brand is the most important signal, and many in SEO don't think about that because they're only focused on SEO tactics. So again, you always, when you're doing SEO is a, I call it product, but really it's marketing, because I think you need to think about it as product and function like product, but it's a marketing channel. You're acquiring customers. So when you think about SEO, you want to think about it as a holistic marketing channel, exactly like we talked about before. How does it impact brand and how does brand impact it? And again, I think so many more people need to think about the brand channel. What does the brand mean? There's, again, going back to the t-shirt company, there's a ceiling on what many brands are able to do with SEO and AEO because their brand is not as well known. But then there's a floor. If I am consulting for a brand, let's say I consulted for Tinder, and when I consulted for Tinder, they were not ranking on dating site and dating app. Because Tinder was Tinder, I said, okay, here are the things we need to do. And in 48 hours, we're going to be ranking on all these keywords. And that's exactly what happens. Now, if I was working for a startup in the dating space, I might not still have them ranking on dating. So that's the brand factor. The same thing with Coinbase. I was consulting for Coinbase. They only ranked on the word Bitcoin. It was one of their primary words. I worked with them on a strategy that they could rank on all of the other crypto terms. Now, for a startup in a crypto space, I'd say, well, you're unlikely to ever rank on any of these top cryptos. You could, you're not going to rank on Ethereum. It's just impossible. But Coinbase did not rank on Ethereum. By doing the SEO we did, within 7 days, we were ranking on Ethereum because they were the brand. So I love consulting for brands because it's completely possible to do that. But if you're not the brand, you may never do that. So that's a really, really important factor in the floor of a brand that it should absolutely be ranking, or the ceiling of a non-brand.
And I think that for SEO, the easiest way to understand the importance of brand and the importance of having a strong brand can be found just digging and looking at the web query find out. Let's say that we are searching for something. Let's say you were saying t-shirt. What are the best t-shirt now available for a young kid, 70 years old, blah, blah. If you look at a query find out, the query find out usually is based on the training data. And if
Yep.
the training data, let's say, are popping up ostensibly, constantly, and let's say statistically in an evident way, determining types of brand because of all the things we have said before, then these brands are also going to be used in the query funnel. And that's why, because of this query funnel, we can see some brands immediately presented in the answer. And this is important to be understood because this is how working long term for the training data, because we know the training data is as a cutoff every X month, is important also for the search live experience of AI search. And then obviously in Google, this is even more evident because, they are based on the same Google search index, which substantially has at the base the knowledge graph. And knowledge graph has all these things, and one of these things casually is our brands. And talking about synergic, holistic, there is a lot of talking about the multimodal experience that is slowly but steadily appearing also, for instance, in AI mode. But okay, there is a lot of talk about multimodal, but why then everybody just talk about text? How much is important to not consider content only text, but also video, image, even software can be content.
Yeah, that's such a fascinating question. I think from a search perspective that it is really important to think of multimodal because that's the way users are going to search moving forward. I do an insane amount of Google Lens searches. I have an Android. I think you have an Android too. I think last time we were together, you had an Android?
No,
Yeah. You're all iPhone? Oh, okay.
yeah, well, the
Wait,
lens phone works very well too. I
okay.
use it lens
Uh,
too.
I you know, I spend my entire life with Google, so I am aware that they spy on me. And Google's going to weigh in right now on them spying on me. But like, I have all the Google products, so I get to see them doing things in the future. So like, I have Circle to Search on my phone. I do a ton of Circle to Search, which is like one level before Google Lens. So if I get something in a foreign language, I can search it. If I get something in my email, I can search like that specific object. So I think multimodal is really important because that's what users are doing. The reason that SEOs don't think about multimodal is because we don't really know what to do with it. So for the most part, it's easy to optimize for text, but I do think multimodal is important to think about because it's going to cut into search. So whereas before it was all text, now users can do search with video, with images, and with voice, of course. So I think it's going to take away some of the text searches that our users are going to do. And that again is going to shrink the pie, which going back to an optimistic tone in the way we started the podcast, I think we're in an inflection point where search it becomes more important. The pie has shrunk. The value of search, and this is the way I like to frame it, in whatever space someone is in, let's go with hotels, with travel. So software might be different, but in hotels, there's a finite amount of people that are going to travel and need to sleep in a hotel in a city. Nothing about AI has changed the finite amount of people that must purchase a hotel room for a night. So the journey has changed for sure. So everything about SEO for travel has changed and will continue to change and gets maybe even easier for users. But the number of people that are doing those searches or number of people needing to end up in a hotel, whether they search or not, does not change. So the way I like to think about this from going from SEO, so like if you were in the travel space, there for those same, let's just pick a number. Let's say there are 10,000 people that need to sleep in Miami in a hotel room every single night. So if you're in the travel space before and you're optimizing for Miami hotels, there may have been 20,000 searches you could optimize for, but only 10,000 of them are going to convert because there were only 10,000 people. But there was a lot of SEO money to be made because you were optimizing for so many more searches. There was so much more traffic. Now, because SEO has become more efficient for a variety of reasons, because of LLMs, because of multimodal, because of spam updates. It used to be you did a search on travel years ago, you would end up on these sites that then passed you to another site. And that was annoying. But again, all these helpful content updates are kicking sites out of the index that didn't really deserve to be there. So you still have your 10,000 people, but the searches that those 10,000 people are going to do are going to be far fewer. So the battle and the investment to be visible for those searches is now even higher. So that's why I think we're in a good moment because there's less real estate to show up on, which means that you need to work harder to show up on that less real estate. And the skill level of the people that can help you get there is very high. So I think when we were in a world, I love doing these searches on LinkedIn to see how many people have the word SEO in their title. There's hundreds and hundreds of thousands, but those hundreds of thousands of people probably can't help you get the very finite real estate on the searches that you need to show up on. There are very few people that have those skills to help you get there. And those people are now more valuable. And then it's easier for them to define why they're different. When I first started consulting, well, I still had a job. One of the things that pushed me to even write my book was a company had reached out to me and they asked me for an SEO proposal. And I guess the CEO is kind of a smartass. I don't even remember the name of the company. And he says, so you're going to pick keywords from Ahrefs or SEMrush? I'm like, yes. And he's like, and then you're going to write content? I'm like, yes. And then he's like, then you're going to link to it. And I'm like, yes. And he's like, so why would I hire you when I can hire someone from, the Philippines? I didn't really have a good answer. So that's why I was like, I have to write a book. So I have a better answer because I could say I wrote a book. But the truth is if you're doing basic SEO and you're just optimizing for spam, totally anybody can do it. You can just follow best practices and you can do it. But now when it becomes a more of a constrained market where it becomes more challenging, you can't just optimize with keywords. You can't just optimize with content. You can't just optimize with backlinks. You actually need a strategy. You need to understand what the users are searching. You need to understand the brand power. There's much less people that can do that. So for those that have that skill set, this is a very bright future. For those that don't have the skill set, I think they were just completely disrupted by it.
Yeah, yes, I totally agree with you. I think that the value of experience is going to get even more important and more, spendable. I want a last question. I want to make you return to your times of international SEO. And I have a very candid question, very direct question. Are you satisfied by how AI, also Google in this sense, AI overview in the AI mode, totally are, at least in my experience, are totally screwing up everything, every international SEO optimization website and SEO have fought for many years to accomplish it, to make real. Because, I mean, so many times happens to me that I do a search in Italian or in Spanish, that Google is returning to me with answers citing and linking to English website, but I know that they have a Spanish version or an Italian version. What is your opinion as a former and maybe still at heart international SEO to for these kinds of brands that are targeting a global market with specific country level version or language version?
So first of all, the reason that Google doesn't do as well in international SEO or international search is because traditional search is just an algorithm. And people in SEO, they like to talk about the Google algorithm with a capital A, like, oh, the algorithm. It's actually many algorithms, and basically an algorithm is just computer code. And they follow rules, and it's not AI. Well, there's a little bit of AI, but they follow rules. And the rules are not always correct, and they have bugs and they make mistakes. So in English, you have 100,000 Googlers and they're doing searches and they find bugs and they file a bug report and then they fix it. I've seen many of those and I've pointed them out to Googlers and they fix things because again, code has bugs. When it comes to international, there may not be that many Googlers who speak Italian, who are doing Italian searches or doing Spanish searches in Spain. So therefore, they never find the bugs. And it's the best that will be. Now, I think AI will improve this because AI can now think like a human. So AI will take that extra level and say, Gianluca wants an Italian site, he wants a Spanish site, and it will override what the code would otherwise say. Let's say the reason the code brings you an English website is because its brand or its domain authority, again, not the Hrefs level domain authority, but the authority within the Google index is just much higher. And the Spanish website or the Italian website just appears to be lower quality or maybe even spammy when you are Spanish and you are Italian and you know it's not. But they don't know that. The algorithm doesn't know that because it's only looking at raw signals. AI can override that and say, well, these signals say it's not a good website, but these signals say it is a good website. We're going to show the website anyways. And they'll do that. So I think that's the challenge. Now, going back to my earlier statement on the skill levels of SEOs, to be able to compensate for that and figure that out. So you have an international client, and I have many international clients, and I actually love this as a challenge to be able to think of how you do that. It's not something that you can pay $5 for on Fiverr or Upwork. So again, if people that can come up with these solutions, I have a client, they just revamped their entire international strategy. They only have one international office in Australia. And I need to come up with a strategy for what's going to happen when they have an international office in each country. So everything I do for SEO has to be scalable to the point that we don't want to make a decision for what do you do for Australia. And then when there's a decision about what do you do for Mexico, you need to make that decision again. So I had them redo their entire URL architecture for what do you do for Australia? What are you going to do for Latin America when you're only going to have an office in Mexico and Argentina, but you want to have separate instances of your domain for Colombia and Peru? So we make those decisions now. So then you set up the structure. Now, if they end up with an office in Colombia and Peru, we already have a playbook. We don't have to go back and remake a decision, likely when they're not even paying me to be their consultants anymore. So that's the way I'd approach it. So it's not just about how do you optimize for this word in Spanish? How do you optimize for this word in Italian? It becomes strategic. How do you tie all this together? How do you make sure there's no duplicate content? What do you do if there is duplicate content? What do you do if the Colombian page is competing with the Mexican page? What do you do if the Spanish page for Spain, which maybe uses different language and wording than the Mexican page, what do you do if that's competing? So it's all strategic questions. I feel very optimistic that AI cannot solve these problems and will not solve these problems, and people will solve them, and very smart and eventually highly paid people will solve them.
Okay, let's hope so. I'm an international SEO, so uh, yes, let's hope so. And yes, personally, for instance, what I try to do, because now, but it's also one thing. Usually AI, and I notice this kind of behavior, even if you search in Spanish, and even if you have set up Spanish, for instance, as your language by default, for instance, in ChatGPT, they tend to then retranslate the question to English. And this is triggering sometimes problems because it's triggering the query fan out English sources. And this is a problem that is come to how the models have been built. And so in order to, this is not just me, it's also Motoko and that is talking about this kind of solution, is really being able to put in the content, in this case, yes, a smoothness sign of geolocalization. Using the content as really be able to make AI, in this case, to understand that you are targeting this specific country with this specific language. Because when it comes to informational content, okay, it's not that big problem. But let's say that if AI is presenting to user a content which is about legal implication, about pricing implication or return policy implication in Mexico, but that are based on the US pages, that is a totally screw up experience and quite a bad brand reputation management risk for a brand. So we are substantially needing to re-instruct how to push down to that localization factor in the content that usually is not so put under the correct attention by the brands because they are just obsessed about, href flag, for instance. So 1 hour of talk. Let's stop talking about AI. Let's talk about talking of the future of search. You were saying before, I'm a consultant, I'm not working 8 hours. Maybe sometimes I'm not working 8 hours sitting in front of a PC. I like to have this. But when you are not thinking about search, or you're not thinking even unconsciously about the future of marketing, digital marketing, and so on, what is the things that Eli Schwartz like to do to spend time?
So I really like to travel. I try to travel as much as possible to go to interesting places to see interesting people that I might never come across. It adds excitement to life. Like, you look forward to where you're going to go next. And then when you come back, you're always thinking about, where the things you did. Hopefully this summer I can make it to Asia. So I'm going to do repeats of something I've done before, going to China, hopefully. Now that not all booked and paid for yet, but to go to China and see the Great Wall again. I went 10 years ago when I lived in Singapore, and then either to Thailand or Vietnam after that. And if anybody listening, watching is in any of those places, every time I travel somewhere, I do an SEO event. So something will happen in any of those places.
Yeah, it's a classic meetup and meeting people, peers in the location. That's a good idea. Well, I wish you can make it up. This looks to be an amazing travel plan. And I think that it's important to travel or, let's say, having things that make you expand your brain, not just going fixating yourself. Also, because I don't know you, but sometimes maybe my best ideas, what I consider my best idea, pop up when I wasn't thinking at all about SEO or AI search or digital.
100%.
Thank you, Ali. It was really, really a good conversation. I really appreciate your time. I know you're a very busy man. And I hope next time maybe to have a second opportunity in the future to see, okay, we were saying this a few
In
months
person.
ago. Let's see
Yeah,
what's happened now.
let's do it in person. I always love doing these in person.
Okay, thank you. And
Thanks for having me.
thank you to everybody for having stayed with us until now. Remember, let me do the influencer thing. Remember to give it a like to this episode and to ring on the bell to be notified about the new ones to come. Thank you and bye bye.